I was young, but not stupid. I was there for about 2 or 3 months. Everything was going great. One afternoon, there was a knock on the door. A very distinguished gentleman standing there. So, can I help you? Yes, you are Dr. Williams? Yes, my name's Gordon. Just moved in the apartment below. Wanted to come up and introduce myself. Ah, new neighbor. Come on in. I'm not only a new neighbor, I understand that you're a pediatrician. Yes, I'm the chief resident pediatrician of the hospital up the street. Now, Dr. Gordon loved to talk about medicine. Every day he'd stop you out the way of the car, out to the swimming pool, and after a minute or two about the weather, he'd start talking about medicine. Not being able to speak medical terminology, I would always cut him short, and I knew that eventually he'd get suspicious. So every day I'd go to the Emory University's medical library. I'd read the journals from the Mayo Clinic, the London clinics, and every night at 5:30 when Dr. Gordon pulled in his parking slot, I was sitting on his doorstep. Every night. Hey, Doc, hear about this new theory they're using up in Mayo? What is it? I'd follow him into his apartment. I'd follow him all over his apartment. He'd go in his bedroom. I'd sit on the table. I'd sit on the chair. Pretty soon he'd come home. Hey, Doc, I don't have time to talk to you right now. I got to go. Guys started to avoid me. One afternoon, he invited me to the opening of a hospital in Marietta, Georgia, the county hospital. So I went. I met many of the doctors and the staff at a banquet. And a couple of weeks later, I got a call from the hospital administrator. Dr. Gordon says, you're the only person we can go to. What's the problem? We have a resident on duty at midnight to 8. Just had a death in his family. We need somebody to cover the shift for about 10 days. Dr. Gordon said, you being a pediatrician, a specialist, you could fit the critique to cover that shift. I said, I can't do that. Why not? Well, you see, I'm not licensed to practice medicine in the state of Georgia, just in the state of California where I hold my residency. I wouldn't want to go through all the red tape for 10 days. No red tape. We'll bring it before the board tomorrow. They'll issue a temporary certificate. You could start tomorrow night. Now, being one who hates to pass up a challenge, I couldn't help but go give it a shot. But 10 days became a year, and I spent a year at the hospital as the administrator on duty. Though I didn't treat patients or diagnose, nor administer drugs, I did supervise a shift. And what used to bother me the most is every night I had to write my observations in the charts. And when I'd go by the charts, I'd write in, but I couldn't read what the other doctor wrote. So I would just scribble for about 2 or 3 lines. I didn't write a word. I always figured if they called me the next day and asked me what it said, I just would disappear, wouldn't come back. But nobody ever called me. Nobody ever asked me what I said. On my own, after a year, I resigned and left. I went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, because I heard the Attorney General's office was looking for lawyers. And I figured if you can be a doctor, you certainly should be able to be a lawyer. Of course, Louisiana practices under the Napoleonic Criminal Code, so I had to obviously study the code. At the time, Louisiana really didn't require a law degree to be a lawyer. However, I took the bar, passed the bar, and went to work for then Attorney General P.F. Grimion in the civil division of his state court, where I tried civil cases for the state for about a year. No one the wiser, I resigned and left. I went on to Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, where I taught as a professor of sociology, as a Ph.D. Wasn't difficult. Read one chapter ahead of my students. They never knew the difference. The only problem was being a Catholic trying to impersonate a Mormon, which caused me a lot of problems. A lot of people say, yeah, but you know, you became a very famous thief. Before you were old enough to drink, you were wanted in 26 foreign countries and 50 U.S. states. Well, yeah, I did a lot of things that got a lot of attention, probably because they'd never been done before. I was walking down a Chicago street one day counting 5 $20 bills I had in my pocket. That's all I had. As I was counting them, I noticed I passed the front door of a bank. So I stopped and thought to myself, I'll go in this bank and I'll open a checking account with this $100. I'll give them this phony Pan Am ID for identification. In 2 weeks, they'll mail me 200 printed checks with this name. And with this ID, I'll be able to cash them anywhere. So I walked in and opened the account. New accounts person came back. So here's a receipt for your $100. These are temporary checks. We'll be mailing you your printed checks in about 10 days. Now, I couldn't help it. I was always inquisitive. I noticed you didn't give me any deposit slips. No, they come from the check printer. Be in the back of the checkbook. Print your name, your address, your account number. You'll get them in about 10 days. I see. I was just wondering, because if I wanted to make a deposit tomorrow, next week, oh, not a problem. You see the table in the lobby? Has all the forms on it. You just go over there and help yourself to a blank deposit slip. You'll have to write your account number in, but just use those till you get your printed ones. So I walked over and took a big stack of them off the shelf. Nobody cared, went back to my hotel, but I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at them on the dresser. And when the morning came, I thought to myself, I wonder, so I bought some magnetic ink, the ink banks use to code account numbers on checks and deposit slips. And I encoded my account number the bank had assigned me to the day before on the bottom of all these blanks. I then went back to the bank, put them on the shelf in the lobby, and everyone who came in put their check in my account. Had about $40,000 at the end of the day. Needless to say, I made a withdrawal. I was at the Logan Airport in Boston. I was trying to catch a flight. It was 11:45 at night. I ran out to the airport. The whole airport was closing down. Rent-a-cars, gift shops, ticket counters. I walked up to the ticket counter. Excuse me, you're closing the airport? So the airport lies in the heart of the city. All jet operations cease at midnight under noise abatement controls. Next flight out is at 6:30 in the morning. I sat down wondering what to do. I noticed they were all sticking their cash and receipts in these big bank bags. Then they'd zip them closed, lock them, put them under their arm, walk down to the terminal where the bank was, stick their key in the night box, open it, drop the bag down the chute, make sure it went down, closed it, locked it. One right after the other, Hertz, Avis, Delta, Eastern, Dobbs House, walking up, dropping that bag. Well, I didn't give this a lot of thought, but I came back to the airport the next night about 11:45, but I had rented a bank guard uniform from a costume store in Boston. I had a big dolly with a container, and I bought some press-on letters, put the name of the bank on the side of it, hung a beautiful sign over the night box, said, "Night box out of order, please leave all deposits with guard on duty." Everyone did. I was the nervous one sitting there. How can a box be out of order? I mean, that's like a night bag. You drop it, open, you drop it. I used to kite checks, and I used to kite them for a great deal of money. In the old days, we had the kite, the front, and the sting. The sting, of course, where you made profit, and, of course, the front, where you spent a great deal of money to create an image. I rented the penthouse suite of the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami. I lived there. Back then, $600 a day. I had a Rolls Royce with a chauffeur that I leased. I wore the most expensive clothes. I tipped only $20 bills for bringing me the morning newspaper, opening the car door. To the 1,100 employees of the Fontainebleau, I was Alan C. Scott, multi-millionaire stockbroker in his early 30s who lived in the penthouse. That's exactly what I wanted them to think. But I must have over-impressed the general manager of the Fontainebleau, for one afternoon he stopped me in the lobby. Mr. Scott, I know you're very busy. Could I have a moment of your time? Certainly. Your Honor, one of our distinguished guests, Mr. Alan C. Scott. Mr. Scott is honored the mayor of Miami, Mayor Kingdom. Mayor was there to give a luncheon speech, talk for a moment. I turned to walk to the elevator, old-time gruff politician. Mr. Scott. Yes, Your Honor. I'm giving a private dinner party at my home tonight, a black tie affair. I'd like you to come as my personal guest. 8 o'clock? Why, thank you, Your Honor. My chauffeur will give you the directions. 8 o'clock, I pulled up at the mayor's home in the Rolls Royce, in the tuxedo, started mingling with the crowd, when I noticed this beautiful young lady sitting up at the bar. About 24 years old, obviously there alone, and every so often signing autographs for the guests. One of the servants came by. Excuse me, let me ask you a question. I don't go to movies. And I absolutely never, ever watch television. Is that an actress? No, sir. Cover girl. Been on the cover of Cosmopolitan, Vogue, 17, Glamour, you name it. Would you like to meet her? Said I'd love to. And I was introduced to Cheryl. Cheryl was very impressed. Thought I was 32, very wealthy. Asked me if that was my Rolls Royce outside. I said yes, one of them. And we talked on till about 2:30 in the morning, and Cheryl had had a few drinks. And finally I said, look, Cheryl, how would you like to come back to my place at the Fontainebleau, have a nightcap? Said, you know, Mr. Scott, I've always wondered about men like you. Beg your pardon? I mean, I always wondered what it would be worth to someone like you to take me back to your place for the whole night. I have no idea. And being 19, I had no idea either. So why don't you make me an offer? I said, well, I don't know, Cheryl, that $300? I don't think so. Well, look, Cheryl, I'm a little novice. How about if I doubled it? $600. I don't think so. Well, look, Cheryl, we could be here all night dickering about the price. Why don't you forget about coming back to my place for an hour? Why don't you just take me to your place, say, for an hour, and I'll give you $1,000 cash in advance, up front, for an hour. That's it. Let's go. So we got in the Rolls Royce. We got back to our hotel. She started to open the door, and I very politely leaned over in the hallway. Now, excuse me, Cheryl. You go ahead in. I'll be right back. She jumped up, grabbed my arm. What? Where are you going? I don't carry $1,000 in my pocket. I'm just going to go downstairs, cash a check. I'll be right back. You mean to tell me That you don't have this cash with you? Well, no, but you think this hotel's going to cash a $1,000 check at 3:30 in the morning? You're not even a guest of this hotel. This isn't just a check. This is a cashier's check from the Chase Manhattan Bank in New York, just like gold. They'll cash it. Let me see. This is a cashier's check. Why don't you endorse it over to me? Oh, no, I couldn't do that. Why not? Well, because this check is for $1,400. We've already agreed on $1,000. So Cheryl gave me 400 change. We both got screwed that night. Needless to say, Cheryl doesn't take checks anymore. And to this day, I always wonder whether I was worth the 400 or not. Sooner or later, of course, you get caught. I was no exception to that rule. I was arrested just once when I was 21 years old by the French police in a small town in southern France, taken into custody on an Interpol warrant. But the French government said I had forged checks in their country, and before they would consider sending me on to anyone else, I obviously had to stand trial. I was convicted in France of forgery and sent to French prison. I served my time in a place called the Maison d'Arrêt, the house of arrest, in a little town called Perpignan. After serving time in the French prisons, I was extradited to Sweden, where I was later convicted of forgery, and sent to a Swedish penitentiary in Malmö, Sweden. After serving a prison term there, the United States returned me to the U.S., where I was later charged with interstate transportation of forged checks and flight to avoid prosecution. Eventually, a United States federal district judge would sentence me to 12 years in federal prison. I served 4 of the 12 years in a federal prison in Virginia outside of Washington, D.C. When I was 26 years old, the government made me a very simple offer. They would remove me from prison on the condition that I go to work for the government. The work was not specified, nor the agency. Just if I agreed, I would be released. Obviously, I agreed. For over 25 years, I've worked for the FBI. Today, I teach at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, where I instruct on counterfeiting and forgery, and of course have worked for federal agents around the world for more than 25 years. And thank you. I make my home in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so I commute back and forth to Washington. I live there with my wife for more than 25 years, and my 3 sons, who are 22, just graduated from University of Kansas at KU and going on to Loyola School of Law in Chicago. And my 19-year-old who's just finished his 2nd year at UNLV in Las Vegas, and my 17-year-old just finished the 11th grade. I very rarely talk about my life. Probably the last time was when I was here to talk at the top of the table, and I'm honored and pleasured that you asked me to come back. I am amazed and fascinated by people who have always been fascinated by my life, and it is amazing to me that 25 years later my book is in print and that Hollywood is making a movie about my life. But I always like to bring people full circle. I obviously was a very gifted child. Gifted because I had not a creative mind or intelligent, but gifted because I was one of those few children that get to grow up in the world with a daddy. The world is full of fathers. I had a daddy. He loved his children more than he loved life itself. He was a man that told you every day how much he loved you, not only by the spoken word, but by physical affection. What I remember most about my dad, he was 6'3", but every night at bedtime he'd walk around to each child's room, 3 boys and a girl. He'd drop down on his knee, give you a kiss on the cheek, give you a hug, and he'd whisper right in your ear, I love you very much. He never missed a night. When my older brother got older, he moved in my room, and he eventually joined the Marines. He was 6'4", he played semi-pro for Buffalo, but when he was on leave, my father would walk around, hug him, kiss him, told him he loved him. When I was 16 years old, like all children, I needed my mother, and I needed my father. All children need their mother and their father. Sometimes you can't have both of them with you, but they're still your father, they're still your mother, and you need both of them. Divorce is a devastating thing for a child to go through. I'm 53 years old. I still deal with it every day. I've never met a human being who told me they didn't. When I was 16 years old, rather than make that choice, I ran away from home. And I'm sure that Hollywood will make a very glamorous movie. But I cried myself to sleep till I was 19 years old. I missed my dad, missed my mom, never got to a senior prom, a high school football game, never got to share a relationship with someone my own age. I grew up very quickly. I always knew I'd get caught. Only a fool would think that you can continually break the law and not get caught. The law sometimes sleeps, but the law never dies. It was just a matter of time. I was caught. I went to some very bad places. My boys have grown up asking their mother, why is it that Dad wakes up in the middle of the night and goes down to the TV room? He doesn't turn the TV on. He just sits there. Because there are things you can't forget. There are things you're not meant to forget. While I was sitting in a French prison, my father, 55, climbing the subway as he did every morning, just simply tripped. He reached for the rail. He missed it. His head hit it. I didn't know he was dead. I didn't get to tell him how much I loved him, how much I missed him, how much he meant to me. I was very fortunate because I was brought up in a great country that always gives somebody a second chance. I owe my government 800 times more than I could ever repay it for the opportunities it's given me these past 25 years. I was very fortunate that 25 years ago I met my wife, didn't have a dime to my name, told her my background, eventually asked her to marry me, and against the wishes of her parents, she did. She changed my life. Now I could tell you, thank you. Now I could sit here and tell you that I saw the light. I could tell you that prison rehabilitated me. But the truth is, God gave me a wife, He gave me children, and it changed my entire perspective about life. Being a father and being a husband has been the most wonderful thing in my life. All of the things I did don't even compare at one iota to the happiness and the joy that has come from being a father and a husband. In a week or so, it'll be Father's Day. I would remind all of you as parents, when you look at your child and when you go to sleep at night, you know they're the last thing you think of. And you know that no matter how intelligent you are, as you lay down to sleep, you cannot tell yourself or express to yourself how much you love your children. So I would remind you to take a look at your own parents. Give them a hug. Give them a kiss. And tell them how much you love them. And to those many men in the audience, obviously very successful men and women, I would remind you that there is only one thing that makes a man a man. A man loves his wife. A man is faithful to his wife. A man next to God and his country put his wife and his children as the most important thing in his life. I've done everything, but I've done nothing greater than that. God bless you, and thank you very much. Thank you.